to ask people what they thought of the webinar and how confident they might be in meeting that deadline of 2nd of December to get the implementation plan into CASA. So at this juncture, I'll mute my microphone and turn my camera off, and I will flick across to Kevin McMurtry. Kevin is a flying operations inspector. He's based in our Brisbane office, and Kevin will take us through the next 60 minutes or so. And after we've done that, we'll open up the forum for some Q&A, and we'll take it from there. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to you now, Kevin.
Thanks, Timothy. Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate your attendance here today, and it's a pleasure being able to see the number of people who've arrived virtually for this SMS implementation planning webinar. I will start with recognition of country before we start the webinar. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we meet on today here in Brisbane and wherever you are located throughout Australia, and their continuing connection to land, water and community, and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. And I would also like to extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are in attendance here today in the Brisbane office and also virtually wherever you are. First of all, I'd just like to introduce myself. As Tim said, I'm a flying operations inspector. I'm based in the Brisbane office. I've been with CASA now coming up for 12 months. Prior to that, 30 years of operational industry experience, flight testing and predominantly Part 142 operations as a head of operations, an examiner, in all instructor ratings, instrument rating and class ratings. Outside my CASA work, I'm also I have an academic role at the University of New South Wales as a researcher and also a SMS course facilitator for the postgraduate programs at the university. I might also start off with just some of my experiences of SMS, which the organisation that I was working for previously coming to CASA implemented an SMS quite early, and just some high-level experiences of that. The organisation experienced quite a serious accident at one point in time, where the emergency response plan was invaluable in managing that situation with for a short period of time, a lost aircraft. No one knew where it was. No one could understand the status of the crew and the students. Fortunately, they survived, albeit some serious injuries. However, in such an intense period of time of crisis and unknown, I can't emphasise how important the emergency response plan is, which is an element of an SMS, to systematically and methodically manage a crisis. That's one of my experiences with an SMS. Throughout COVID, the organisation, like all aviation operations, experiencing a lot of uncertainty, which had a very detrimental effect on flight crew and personnel, and the SMS was invaluable in safety critical personnel reporting in things that errors and things that they were making, which they normally wouldn't, which were putting it down to preoccupation, and this enabled us to discuss these sorts of things at training meetings and so forth, which they were quite positive experiences from my perspective. I did contact some industry operators this week just to also ask for some high level experiences of their SMS, and also I could share some experiences of another regulated, Transport Canada, which did a post-implementation SMS review on all of the operators in Canada back in 2019. And the the review revealed that the majority of the operators stated that if the regulations no longer required an SMS, they continue to use their SMS because of the safety and business benefits it actually brought to their business. Another operator in Australia, a Part 142 operator, stated that the SMS encourages decisions based on data as opposed to subjective decision making or decision making when the organisation doesn't have all the information. One other operator stated once they establish their SMS, staff become a key source of intelligence in identifying hazards that management weren't aware of in their operations, and before those hazards became an issue, and potentially costing the organisation considerable amounts of money, they were mitigated. That's just some of the experiences from operators around Australia and in North America and Canada. This will be the webinar. It's a presentation. Unfortunately, I'm lecturing on this, and I'm doing that as opposed to answering questions throughout the webinar. I encourage you to write your questions down or post them in the chat, and then we can have an opportunity to discuss those questions at the end. If there's any questions I can't answer at the particular time because I don't have any, I don't have the relevant information at hand, I'll take that on notice, and I will research that, and I will email you because we have every participant's contact details. I will provide that information to you by email, so I can provide the correct information to you. So the topics we're looking at today is what is an SMS, why you need an SMS, the SMS rules are applicable to air transport, and certain or relevant Part 138 aerial work operators. What is an SMS implementation plan? Then SMS implementation planning itself, where we'll do a walkthrough of 5 steps of SMS implementation plan, submitting your SMS implementation plan and the dates when that has to occur, and then what happens after the submission of your SMS implementation plan. So what is an SMS? It's a system, it's a safety system. I like to describe it in 3 contexts or perspectives. First of all, it's not just a manual. A very important part is a manual, your safety management system manual, because it contains your policy and procedures and describes your processes of your safety management system and how you're going to manage safety. But importantly, the success of an SMS is by virtue of everyone in the organisation, starting from the senior management, the accountable manager, the CEO, is being committed and a hunger for information, wanting to know what's happening in the operation, and safety critical personnel like pilots, engineers, a willingness to report hazards, their own errors, so the organisation can learn from that and then apply the appropriate mitigation. So it's a cultural system based on everyone's behaviour and willingness to share information, and then apply the appropriate mitigation to manage risk. So it actively seeks out safety issues in your operations and services, and then develops corrective actions to reduce the risks that may be present in the organisation's operations. And then an important part of an SMS is that, once we apply the appropriate mitigations and defences, it is also to monitor those defences to check that they're working satisfactorily to reduce the risk to an acceptable level. So policy and organisational perspective, this is your SMS manual, your policy, your safety policy and objectives. It's a systematic and organised approach to managing safety. Importantly, it identifies safety accountability, starting with the CEO, and then other key personnel like the safety manager, which we'll have a brief discussion on shortly, head of flight operations, head of training and checking, and other non-key personnel who are essential to managing the organisation and responsible for safety, all the way to line pilots and engineers. It's everyone's responsibility, and the SMS manual does outline those responsibilities and accountabilities. It's important also, and I'd like to emphasise this throughout the presentation and the webinar, is that the CEO in safety management systems language is known as the accountable manager, and it's very important for the CEO to get involved in the SMS implementation development right from the beginning, because the CEO is fully accountable for the safety of the organisation and compliance with regulations. We'll discuss that a little bit further. And then, to a policy and organisational perspective, an SMS documents these policies in a specific place and how the organisation manages safety. Processes and procedures perspective, an SMS has a number of process procedures, like a reporting system, a hazard, how to analyse risk from hazards that may have been reported. So that's to a process and procedures perspective. It enables identification of hazards and risks, assessment of those hazards to determine the level of risk that may be present, and then prioritising that risk to, if it has to be enacted upon immediately, or a certain timeline that the organisation feels comfortable with. And then the application of the appropriate mitigation measures to reduce risk to a sufficient level. Why do we need a safety management system? To a global perspective, ICAO, CASA, as a member state like all other national aviation authorities, it is a requirement under Annex 19 of the ICAO Annex Convention, that each member state is required that its service providers, air operators, implement SMS and a certain timeline to implement that. So it is an ICAO requirement, and then CASA then enlivens that in the regulations. To an operator perspective, why do we need an SMS? Well, to maintain and improve aviation to an acceptable level. To manage safety within the standards expected in the aviation community, in our vast community of what the public and our flying customers expect, and also other legal areas to protect the organisation against mishaps and errors or occurrences that could attract other legal implications, such as workplace health, safe and healthy health laws, and fair work type of legislation. The safety management system can also assist in protecting the organisation against those types of occurrences in legal jurisdictions. Also, to protect against the direct costs of accidents or serious incidents. The direct costs are the tangible, very obvious and apparent costs of an accident or damage to an aircraft or equipment, to property, which can be quite substantial. That's to protect against those costs, and then also to protect against the indirect costs, which are the costs that aren't so obvious at the beginning of a serious event like an incident or an accident, which these costs can accumulate over time and in fact they can far outweigh the direct costs. Depends what source of information you look at, but sometimes these costs can multiply into hundreds of times more than what the direct cost of an incident or an accident may be. Indirect costs can include things like increased insurance premiums, personnel, unwell, injury, cost of compensation, loss of business, loss of reputation, things like that. They're the sorts of types of indirect costs which can not be so apparent right from the beginning. Clean-up costs, environmental costs, and so forth. Industry and social costs. Industry costs. Aviation accidents are quite high profile. They tend to make the front line, the front page news, and the headlines and the 6 p.m., 7 p.m. news quite quickly. They generate a lot. They attract a lot of interest, and of course, if there's fatalities involved or serious injury, that has an impact on the industry and also society. And also an organisation that may experience a serious event, and I can say this from first-hand experience. The serious accident places an extreme burden on everyone in the organisation, especially small organisations when everyone knows each other and someone has been seriously injured as a result of an accident. So SMS can assist in protecting us against these types of costs. Another thing in SMS, well, overarchingly, as an SMS, as the system matures, it provides the opportunity to develop safety intelligence related to the organisation's operations. It might be obvious to the operator what the hazards in their operation. It could be operating at a non-towered airport, so they could a busy non-towered airport. So one of the most obvious risks could be mid-air collision risk, breakdown of separation, so forth. So they're the obvious things which we can see at the surface level. What an SMS does facilitate as it matures, it allows us to develop intelligence of things that we don't know, things that are lurking beneath the surface, so to speak, as illustrated in the iceberg diagram. And this is through reporting as safety critical personnel develop knowledge and experience and trust and confidence in reporting that allows the organisation to build up a knowledge base of information and hazards that they may not have understood or aware of in the past. And that's something that an SMS does very well once it matures and everyone's is reporting in the system. The rules that relate to safety management systems for air transport operators, subpart 119.f of the CASA, and for certain area work operators, 138.b.6. One thing I'd like to highlight that these two regulation sets, the SMS requirements are identical, with one exception for air transport, which we'll discuss shortly. The safety management system regulations, they comprise of 4 SMS components and 12 SMS elements, and each one of these regulations they're identical in that respect. It doesn't mean that there's different regulations, different SMS requirements. That's just one thing I'd like to highlight, that the SMS, it's just relevant to the type of operation. Now, for airwork operators, not every airwork operator has to implement an SMS. Only air operators that conduct operations in transporting marine pilots, or operations in multi-engine transport category rotorcraft with a max takeoff weights in excess of 3,175 kilograms. or aeroplanes, multi-engine aeroplanes with a max takeoff weight greater than 5,700 kilograms, or turbine engine aeroplanes other than turboprop aeroplanes, i.e. a turbofan. They're the only type of, they're the relevant aerial work operations that must implement an SMS under Regulation 138.B.6. Now the key dates, 2nd of December 2022, on or before to submit your SMS implementation plan. And then the following key date is on or before the 3rd of June 2024 to submit your SMS manual content. So what is an SMS implementation plan? If we have a look at point 1 and 2, assist in preparation in accordance with the regulatory requirements and identifies gaps. Now, as I mentioned before, the regulatory requirements comprise of 4 SMS components and 12 SMS elements which are related to each 4 component. An implementation plan, if conducted systematically and methodically, which we'll discuss how to do this shortly, will allow you to identify within your existing organisation systems if you do in fact have some SMS elements already in place, or you're missing, or some are absent. That's the first one of the first things that an implementation plan permits. It also assists in identifying personnel which are required for the SMS, the account manager and the safety manager, and also personnel who will be assisting in the implementation and development of the SMS itself, outlining who those people are. It also allows you to determine your requirements for safety personnel, like your safety manager, and we'll discuss at a very high level those requirements for you to consider shortly. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, and I want to continue to emphasise this, the accountable manager, their commitment to the SMS, and importantly, understanding the SMS and how it works and its importance in managing safety and risk in the organisation. And also the last component or step of the SMS implementation plan is to create a timeline for each implementation task. AC 119-01 version 2, which is available to download on the CASA website, has located in Appendix B, an SMS implementation planning tool, which comprises of the gap analysis and the implementation planning tool to allow you to perform your gap analysis and then start planning the implementation processes for your SMS. Appendix C has the submission process, and we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. Also, the AC 119-01 Appendix B is also available. The AC itself is a PDF, but when you go to the CASA website to download this document, on the bottom left-hand corner of the page where you download, it's got associated documents, and if you click on that link, it'll open up a Microsoft Word version of the implementation planning tool, which will allow you to edit and populate with as much information as you wish for your implementation plan. So we'll walk through the 5 steps of implementation planning now. Step 1 is to review the regulatory requirements that are relevant to your operations on your air operator certificate or air work certificates. If you're an air transport operator under 121, 133 or 135, the regulations relevant for safety management systems for your operation is 119.f. If you're an air transport operator, the regulations or the relevant air transport operator which I provided an overview before, would be subpart 138.b.6. Once again, these two regulation sets are identical in respect to their 4 components and 12 elements, with the exception, of air transport. There's one additional requirement for a flight data analysis program, which we'll look at shortly. So this is the 4 SMS components that I've been raising and speaking about, which are identical for both regulation sets, 119.190 and 138.145. And then each component has its associated elements of an SMS, which comprise 12 in total. We're not going to go through discuss all of these individual elements. That's not the purpose of this this webinar. Those sorts of webinars CAS will be rolling out next year in actual SMS implementation. So the difference between the 2 regulation sets is for air transport operators who operate aircraft with a max takeoff weight more than 27,000 kilograms, aeroplanes, or rotorcraft with a max takeoff weight of more than 7,000 kilograms, or with a maximum operational passenger seat configuration of 9 seats. And the regulations require flight data recorded. Those type of operations have to implement a flight data analysis program also. Step 2 is the gap analysis. The gap analysis is the opportunity for you to sit down with the gap analysis tool, the implementation planning tool, which we'll have a look at shortly, an extract of that tool, and to systematically read the implementation questions, and then answer those questions to determine whether you have an existing system or practice or process in place for that particular implementation question. It could be an informal system, it could be a documented system in another type of a manual, in a quality manual, but you don't have it in an SMS manual at this point in time. So that's what the gap analysis provides the opportunity to do. It identifies gaps between your current processes and those required by the SMS regulations, the 4 components and 12 elements. Identifies existing systems, processes, and how they can be formally integrated into an SMS manual. And I'd like to emphasise that an accurately completed gap analysis will assist in establishing a solid foundation for your SMS manual and overarching system. This document is an extract out of the AC 119 implementation planning tool. And I'll just do a quick walkthrough of this. The legislation references in the left-hand column of what the applicable regulation related to the component or element of the safety management system. The next part or component is the implementation question, which you ask yourself, you read, you ask yourself, and then if that process or system is in existence in your organisation or not. You can see a simple yes/no answer in the next in the next column. The 4th column, you can actually populate that with where that actually is, or it may not exist. The last column of the planning tool provides also guidance material references applicable to the implementation question. And you'll note here that I have highlighted AC 119.01, sections 3 and 4. They are the sections that are related to this particular implementation question. And importantly, those sections will also provide you with additional guidance on how to comply with the regulation. So that's something why it's important to systematically, methodically go through each one of these implementation questions. In the AC, they're called performance indicators. On the SMS, its performance, an indicator of its performance, that they must be present and suitable. So I'd just like to emphasise the importance of following through each one of these systematically, and also referring to the AC to develop some additional information and knowledge on the requirement of the particular implementation question, which in the AC is called a performance indicator. And then we systematically keep working through each one of those questions, as I mentioned before. That will assist with conformity with the rules. If you systematically work through the implementation question, answering the questions, identifying or not an existing system, it'll allow you to develop and construct an SMS which will be hopefully compliant with the regulations when submitted, and then when it's evaluated by CASA. That's the goal. That when you submit something, it's going to be compliant, and we don't have to go through too many communications in having to rectify things that are not compliant. And importantly, it will assist you in implementing an effective SMS, which will in time will mature and grow for your organisation. Another important consideration is not every element of your SMS will be immediately operating once you implement your SMS or your SMS is approved by CASA. Some parts or some components and elements of your SMS take time to mature. For example, reporting system. When you start commencing operations with a safety management system, and you've got a reporting policy, a just culture policy, it'll take time for people to understand that through training, through knowledge and understanding, and then once people understand the system and they're confident in the system and they trust the system and the personnel who manage the system, reporting would naturally start occurring within the organisation's safety management system, so that it can't be just switched on immediately. Some parts of the SMS will take time to develop. That's an important thing to understand. However, the important part to understand also is that the SMS manual must, when it's submitted for assessment by CASA, it must cover all of the regulatory requirements. It can't be any SMS components or elements missing. They all must be present when the SMS is assessed by CASA when you ask for submission. So this is just an example of the gap analysis. You could ask yourself the question: does the accountable manager and senior management promote a positive safety culture and a just culture? And do we visibly demonstrate commitment to safety? You ask yourself that question and you say, well, I don't have a safety management system, but yeah, we do. We take safety seriously. Our engineers, our pilots, they come and report. They knock on the head of operations door and they report their errors, they report occurrences. So you're confident that you do have a positive safety culture and people are confident to report things. So it may not be documented or in a manual somewhere, but it's an informal system. You just need to formalise that in your safety management system, in policy and procedures. You ask yourselves, does the safety policy actively encourage safety reporting? Or pre-implementation, you may not have a written safety policy. So you say, well, no, we don't have a safety policy, but we certainly do encourage reporting. So yes, we do. We have a reporting, we have a good reporting ethic. We just have and positive reporting behaviours. We just need to formalise this in a system. So you could say that's an informal system that you need to implement. Is there a just culture policy and principles that clearly identifies acceptable and unacceptable behaviours. If you don't have a just culture policy or rigid policy, well, you simply don't have one. So that's something you may not have, and that you haven't formalised. So we just answer the question, no, I don't. Does the safety policy contain safety objectives suitable for the size, the complexity of the organisation? And are they communicated throughout the organisation? You may not have defined safety policy, safety objectives. So that's a no for that particular implementation question, which means you have to develop those safety objectives. So that's just an example of the systematic method that you can work through answering these questions as you work through the implementation plan, gap analysis and planning tool. Once you've gone through the gap analysis, then it's time to start planning the activities, of implementing these resources, tasks, and so forth, to facilitate the priority of the SMS, the 4 components, 12 SMS elements over time. So what you do, you describe people who will be responsible for the SMS implementation tasks, the resources that you may need in people, time, hard resources, technology, computers, software, and then outline those tasks in a timeline. You can commence, and this is another extract out of the implementation planning tool. You can commence. A good starting point is to sit down and describe your organisation. What you do, where you are, where you're located, what bases, type of operations, the operating environments that you operate in, IFR, day, VFR, mix of both, oceanic, just outline the sort of operations. You can then start thinking about identifying any hazards that, existing safety systems you may already have. You may have, as I mentioned before, an informal reporting, or you may in fact already have some type of formal reporting system already in place. You can start documenting these things. Internal and external interfaces. We could start thinking about what an internal interface, for example, could be your maintenance organisation. If you have a maintenance organisation as part of your company, it could be the dispatch section of your organisation. It could be the financial section of your organisation. That's an internal interface, and start thinking about how they can influence and affect safety in your organisation in both positive and negative ways. External interfaces could be external maintenance organisations, spare parts providers, avionics workshops, the fuel supplier, the airport operator, air traffic control at the airport that you may operate. That is an external interface. Start thinking about how those entities can influence the safety of your operation and document that. And identify the 3 to 5 top hazards that you're aware of in your organisation. If operated at CTAF, non-tower airports, it could be mid-air collision risk, could be a risk. If you predominantly work at night time, late at night, could be CFIT, and so forth. So there's just identify what risks or hazards could be applicable to your type of operation. And then we've populated all of these implementation questions and answers into our gap analysis, and then we start populating our implementation planning tool section with the persons responsible. As you can see, I've got the accountable manager there. As I'd like to continue to emphasise the importance of the accountable manager. Preferably hands-on helping out with the development of the SMS, but that may not always be practical, but definitely having a good understanding of the SMS implementation process. Other persons responsible for the various different tasks for implementation, the phase of implementation of the particular task. At the moment, we're looking at safety policy, the date, and then the resources that are required that you've determined, and then an outline of what's involved in the planning process and task. To help with each, to determining and distinguish between all of these tasks for implementation, it can assist if you think of each one. Is it a philosophy, which generally means it needs a policy behind it? Is it a process like a reporting system? Or is it a practice? Is it a risk assessment tool? Is it an audit program? So when you're reading the implementation question, think of it in these terms. Is it philosophy? Okay, I need a policy for that. Hazard risk management. Okay, there's a procedure and processes required there, and practices. So it just helps in differentiating in what you have to do in these planning processes. Safety personnel determine, important thing I have forgot to mention, that the SMS is, this is a very important point, is completely scalable to the size, nature and complexity of your operation and what you do. In saying that, the 4 SMS components and elements, they all must be present and suitable and eventually operating and effective. So your SMS manual has to comprise of all of those components and elements, but the way that you achieve compliance with those components and elements is completely dependent upon the size of your organisation, the nature of your operations and the complexity of your operation. It's scalable. That's a very important point to think about when you're developing your SMS. And that goes the same with your safety personnel, like your safety manager. The CO, a requirement under 119.d is, and in the safety management system is known as the accountable manager. The safety manager is required under the regulations. What I would like to do is just touch on this briefly. This webinar isn't a safety manager webinar, but I'd just like to provide the opportunity to start thinking about this. Now, the safety manager, the difference between the safety manager and the accountable manager. The accountable manager is accountable for the SMS, and ultimately accountable for the safety of the operation. The safety manager is responsible for the day-to-day operations and management of the safety management system. So that's a very important distinction to understand between the two key personnel. The accountable manager is responsible for the SMS, and that's why I'm continuing to emphasise the importance of the CEO being involved in the development of the SMS so they understand their accountabilities in respect to it. Safety managers, again, safety manager requirements are dependent upon the size, complexity and nature of your operations. The safety manager could be an existing employee who is in another role in the organisation, and then your organisation is allocating a certain amount of time for that person to carry out their safety management or safety manager responsibilities in respect to the SMS. That's perfectly okay. It could be a part-time employee. It could be a contracted employee. So there's many different ways to appoint a nominated safety manager and have them in your organisation. And CASA will be providing more guidance on this throughout next year. Another important consideration is the CEO and the safety manager. The safety manager is an independent position, independent from other key personnel, and reports directly to the CEO or accountable manager. The CEO and safety manager cannot be the same person within the only in unforeseen circumstances for a period of 7 days under the regulations. That's it for like illness or incapacitation. So that's one thing that the regulations don't permit, is the CEO and the safety manager being the same person. The safety manager and other key personnel, like the head of operations, head of flight operations, can be the same person under the regulations after CASA has considered this and provided an approval for that. So that's just something that, again, is dependent upon the organisation itself. The last step in SMS implementation planning is develop your timeline of these implementation processes. You'll see that this is just an example. It's got 3 phases and various different dates of implementation. You can develop any type of timelines you wish, whether it's 2 phases, 3 or 4 phases, whatever suits your workload and resourcing. Implementation planning doesn't have to be a linear event. It can be staggered. It's how you wish to implement this based on your resources and your knowledge of the things that you need to do. There's no set way of doing this. Once again, key dates, 2nd of December 2022 for implementation plan submission, and 3rd of June 2024 for SMS manual content. And finally, the implementation planning. You could populate your timeline into each implementation plan section of for those tasks. How to submit your SMS implementation plan. Detailed instructions are found in Appendix C of AC 119-01. Also on the CASA website, on the Safety Management Systems landing page, there is also we have a look at shortly, the bottom left-hand tile, how to submit your SMS implementation plan, and it provides you instructions how to do that. Provides you a link to a form, a submission form to accompany your SMS implementation plan, and how to submit it. Everyone by now, or maybe not everyone, should have received a CASA unique reference number for your SMS implementation plan. It's important that when you follow the instructions and include that reference number in the email header, so the CASA section that's responsible for reviewing the SMS implementation plans can locate these in the regulatory services inbox, because there's a lot of emails in an inbox, and it makes the job a lot easier for us. And look, and it also prevents us having to contact you to say, hey, we haven't got your SMS implementation plan, and you may have already sent it. So what's next? After the submission of your SMS implementation plan, you'll receive an acknowledgement from CASA that you've submitted that. CASA will perform a review of your SMS implementation plan, and you'll receive feedback based on the outcome of that review. And then throughout 2023, 2024, CASA will be rolling out an educational campaign on SMS development. We haven't finalised the exact format that will be happening. We're hoping to do more webinars like this, but I suggest that you keep looking at what do I do next newsletters, and that will have that information on that for you to look out for how CASA will be supporting industry in their SMS development throughout 2023. Incidentally, tomorrow you'll receive an email. Each participant of the webinar will list all the resources that I've mentioned today, including the ones on this slide. And importantly, I've provided links to relevant sections in these documents that just will assist you developing some further knowledge on your planning process for your implementation, SMS implementation plan. The SMS resource kit, which is now in its 3rd edition and is now available on the CASA website. is an extremely good resource. Very detailed information in SMS 1, 7 and 8 to also assist in developing your SMS implementation plan and discussing and considering the scalability of your SMS to your organisation. I encourage you to download those and read that. They are an extremely good resource and very helpful. And then booklets 2, 3, 4 and 5 provide the overarching 4 SMS components and their associated elements in assisting in providing very detailed information to assist you developing your SMS. The CASA webpage, the SMS landing page, the top middle tile is to create your SMS implementation plan, and the bottom left is how to submit. Just one other document which I'd like to mention is a document which is produced by a collaborative called the Safety Management Systems International Collaboration Group, which is a group of national aviation authorities, regulators, global regulators, including ICAO and CASA, which have developed a whole range of resources. And this particular resource I thought would be helpful. It's a plain English guide for small organisations on SMS implementation. It's got examples of safety policy, examples and describes safety performance indicators and so forth. And I've also included a link to that document in the email that you receive tomorrow. We've covered quite a bit. I don't really want to continue reading through this particular slide. It's just everything we've covered today, but I'd prefer to provide some time for everyone to the opportunity to ask any questions. Thanks for listening to me.
All right, thank you for that, Kevin. I'm just typing in our chat the QR code if people would like to try and access it for the SMS evaluation tool. It might be just something they can just download straight off the computer if they wish. Now, I'll just let you catch your breath for a second there, Kevin. We've been just typing a few bits and pieces as you've been going, and we do have 1 or 2 questions that have just started to filter through. Yes, Linda, the slides and a link to the video presentation plus these resources will be sent out to everyone who attended tomorrow. So you'll get that tomorrow. Sean, Kevin put in a comment/question earlier on saying that I noticed that this presentation is primarily around flight ops. Is there going to be a requirement for Part 145 MRO facilities to comply? Well, they already have to have, of course, an SMS in place. He's given an example here of ExecuJet has a very mature SMS that is regularly audited and internally reviewed. Would I be correct in thinking that MROs will be part of the operations company to confirm SMS implementation for working on their 119, 121 or 135 aircraft? Sean, if you like, I might get you to come off mute if you wanted to address that question by voice specifically to Kevin.
Yes, g'day Kevin, great to meet you, and thank you for the opportunity to ask the question. I guess I'm referring back to how we would normally handle FAA, or if you like, Bermuda, or those types of companies. When we're working on their operational aircraft, or if you like, their chartered aircraft, this is business aviation too, I should explain. What they are and what they do is they actually audit the MRO facility to make sure that that MRO facility has a distinguished SMS. And that's, if you like, part of the makeup of the operational SMS of that particular company. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So third party wise, when the operational company, needs to understand that that maintenance facility has an SMS, and that's how it's covered in that stance.
Sure. I'm not entirely 100% certain what you're asking. I'm reading what you posted now. So so a 145 organisation, it has required to have an SMS under the 145 regulations. We've established that now. So you wish to confirm that an SMS implementation for working on the 119121 aircraft. I'm just sort of a little bit unclear of the question.
So the operational company, as you've just explained, will need to have an SMS.
Yes,
is that correct? Yes.
That's the operational company is ExecuJet.
No. The operational company could be anybody that's operating a business style aircraft.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So yeah. Okay. So a 121 or a 135 operator you're referring to.
Yep.
Yes, they will have to have an SMS implemented submitted to CASA by the 3rd of June 2024. That's correct. Yes.
Yep. And they'll nominate a MRO company, and that MRO company must have an SMS. I guess that's what I'm saying. You get what I'm trying to say? So these aircraft being worked on, if a 119 and a 121 aircraft must have a Part 145 company work on them. That's the operational constraints and charter constraints against that aircraft. That operational company needs to nominate a maintenance company that does their work, if you like. And that maintenance company must have, as I say, Part 145, but I'm also suggesting now that it must have a standardised, or if you like, a mature SMS system in place. Would that be a fair analogy?
Well, they would, but they would have to have an SMS under their existing SMS would have to be, if they're 145, it would have to meet the 145 requirements. But it wouldn't have to meet the 119 requirements. No, it's specifically for 145. Does that answer your question?
That's it. No. Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Sorry, it was a bit long-winded.
No, that's fine.
No, wonderful. Thank you, Sean. Please take advantage of the time we've got left, everyone. If there's any specific questions or comments that you would like to address, please either type them in or please feel free to just jump on the mic while we've got a couple of minutes left.
I've just got one there from Craig Day, following on from previous. Will this also apply to aerodrome operators? Aerodrome operators have their own unique set of SMS rules, Craig. So the SMS regulations are relevant to the type of operation. Air transport 119.f, air work 145. There's a set of regulations for 145. They're expressly aligned with the part that the service provider operates under.
139. They have their own specific SMS requirements in their own time and their own timetable. Same with 145, Part 142, etc. Anyone else for anything else before we wrap it up? Hang on, I've got a new message at the bottom. What does it say? Oh, Linda from Bendigo. Is there guidance somewhere about how to adjust for the different size and complexities of operation? Speaking, of course, from the point of view of a very small operator.
Hi, Linda. I've got your question there. Yeah, definitely. The AC 119 provides some high-level guidance on determining scalability and how to apply that. Importantly, the SMS booklets 1, 7 and 8 have got a lot of detailed information about how you can scale your SMS to your organisation. That's what I would suggest, that a good starting point for you to have a look at in those resources. And look, we'll talk about that more next year also when we start the campaign on SMS development. Book 7, thanks Ashley. Book 7 of the SMS resource kit, Linda, has the scalability detailed in that booklet.
And Mahendra from Amber here down in Melbourne. Mahendra, thank you, mate. Could an operator nominate a backup CEO as the SMS manager? Or I think you mean there, Mahendra, the safety manager. So could a backup CEO who's been nominated in that role, could they take on the role of safety manager? I think I'm reading you correctly there.
Yeah, the regulations do permit that, Mahendra. There's what I might do is I will email you the specific references to the legislation so you can have a look at those for yourself. But that's true. In unforeseen circumstances, they're provided that the key person is listed and nominated in the exposition. In some instances, they have to be pre-approved or authorised by CASA. Again, that's dependent upon the nature, size, and complexity of the organisation. But a short answer is yes. But what I'll do is I'll ask Fran to send your email to me so I can provide you with the exact legislation references, so you've got that information firsthand and directly to the source regulation, so you can understand, and I'll provide an explanation for you.
All right, thanks, Kevin.